You're listening to the Beauty Beyond Bella podcast, powered by Formula Wellness.
I'm your host, Dr. Yvette Suarez, owner and medical director of Bella Excellence, a diamond-accredited anti-aging med spa in the Tampa Bay, Florida area. On this show, we explore the latest trends in health, beauty, and anti-aging medicine while celebrating the inspiring journeys and achievements of our guests.
So hello, this is our dietitian and IFBB, Holly Baxter. Absolutely gorgeous. And so we're going to get right into it because we're going to have to ask lots of questions answered. So the first one I'm going to ask her, this is a really hard question that everybody always wants to know. What is that perfect diet that we can all get?
Honestly, I don't know that there is a one size fits all. There are so many different approaches, which I think is a great thing because it gives us lots of flexibility. So yeah, I think the way that I would talk to a client or friend and how I approach nutrition myself is make sure, number one, that you've got a high protein diet, but how you structure your carbohydrates and your dietary fats is really up to you. It's like personal preference. So I think the biggest, most important thing when it comes to like maintaining a healthy body weight, or if you're trying to lose body fat, is to make sure that your calories are set correctly for your goal and you're eating a high amount of protein or within the optimal protein reference ranges. But carbs and fats, it's so I guess personal. It depends what somebody really enjoys. So
No, I love the concept of balance. I think people try all the different fads and they absolutely have no carb in their diet, which I think is actually not good for them. And we're taxing our kidneys and people don't think about that. They think the less they eat, the better they do. And people get into this funk, right? They'll say, I haven't eaten anything this week and I haven't lost a pound. Can you explain why that's happening to them?
yeah, okay. So if they're eating I'm assuming they're eating something but just very low calories. Is that right?
They say they're not eating, right? But are they
Yeah.
eating just a bag of chips because they starve themselves all day?
Right. So it could be a couple of things. I think, often when it comes to tracking macros, and I follow flexible dieting. So this is basically where we would assign somebody like protein, carbs, and fat targets, and probably a fiber target as well. I think there's inherent like error when it comes to like humans and tracking their food. So for those that might be tracking calories, from time to time, I think we get it a little bit off. But it's not unusual for somebody to make that comment, but still be eating a large amount of energy if they're eating like very calorically dense, like energy dense foods. And it doesn't take very much to go a long way, particularly if you're eating fast foods, and the highly processed foods, things like that. They do quickly add up. So it may not seem like you're eating like a lot of volume, but the actual caloric density of those foods might be exceptionally high. So a great example, I think just this weekend, I was out for a couple of meals and I ordered a delicious poke bowl. So I went to like Poke Company or something like that, had an ahi tuna poke bowl. And after kind of going through and adding up all of the ingredients and then the sauces, it was like an 800 calorie, poke bowl, which is probably 2/3 of my current, as I'm a competitor, my current calories for the day. So that meant I only had one like relatively small meal, left. So it just goes to show you, even if you think you're eating healthy or low calorie foods, it's often those hidden calories, the dressings, the sauces, the cheeses. I mean, they add up. But I think the other thing that does happen is there's this concept called metabolic adaptation. So your metabolism will adapt to a lower amount of calories if you force a low energy diet. It's your body's beautiful, like biological process, like a self-defense system where your metabolism adapts down over time in response to low energy availability. So you are technically giving yourself less, but your body is able to kind of conserve energy in a way. It's almost like you become this very efficient machine that can do a lot on very little. So that's often another reason that we see people, reporting really low calorie intake and they're still struggling to lose weight. They're doing all of the exercise. So it is reversible, absolutely. But I've seen that a lot.
I think I see that a lot where they think they're making good choices. They'll have, like you said, a very high starch diet, one meal a day, and then they're exhausted. And so that fatigue and that loss of protein, they don't understand that you can eat really healthy multiple times a day or more calories if they're good meals. But how do we keep people away from processed foods? So I tell people, If you have everything coming out of a box,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not a good thing that you're doing for yourself.
Look, I don't know. I think I have my opinion probably is the 80-20 rule. We were chatting about this prior, and I think it's really important to have a good amount of diversity in your diet. And I'm a dietitian. I still enjoy a wide variety of foods from all food groups, and I still do eat, processed food. I just mentioned I still eat out quite a bit. But I think just having a good understanding of like what the constituents of the food are that you're eating. Is it an energy dense food? Does it have a lot of fats? Does it have a lot of carbohydrates? Because energy balance, your calories in, calories out, obviously is the most important thing to consider. But I guess my bigger concern with lots of processed foods and things out of a box is that they're not always very nutrient rich, and our bodies can't just survive on simple carbohydrates and then things that don't contain essential vitamins and minerals. So I think it's just being aware of the types of foods that you're consuming and reading the food label, having a look at the vitamins and minerals, um, and trying to keep some kind of balance. Because I think ultimately, I think the people that have the most amount of success long term are probably eating a balanced diet and one that they feel one that feels sustainable for them. So I think that's where you need to have a little bit of that fun stuff, but the bulk of your diet should be coming from, micronutrient rich foods like fresh whole foods.
And I think a lot of our food is probably nutrient deficient in this country, unfortunately. I try to tell my patients also we still need to take a good amount of medical branded vitamins, right? Third-party vitamins.
Yes.
A multivitamin, whether it's a fish oil, vitamin D, all the B, methylated B vitamins. People literally think that they can get all their supplements just from eating the foods that we have. And I know here we don't get that.
It's really difficult. I'll often do like a quick food analysis for some of my clients, and I think the ones that are most common in women especially would be iron. None of us eat enough meat in general, but red meat is obviously a great source of iron. So many of us are deficient in that. Calcium is another one that we see people under consuming a lot of, and that's obviously a great source of protein. Omega-3, I personally do not enjoy cooking seafood or like shellfish. So like I'm often eating out to get that, but there's no way, just in my normal 7-day weekly diet that I get, enough omega-3. So I think supplementing with some of those things is really important. And then nobody ever eats anywhere near enough of magnesium or zinc because none of us eat, or few of us make the effort to have, nuts and seeds and things like that as well.
Or broccoli all day. That's not happening.
No, definitely not. So absolutely, I'm a big proponent of adding a multivitamin and just those little extras just to fill in the gaps as like a safety net.
Yeah, I love that. Macros, that word, which is so easy for you, really intimidates people out there. They think that they can't understand. Can you show them how easy it really would be just to calculate your macros and understand what you would need in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so I think to calculate your like nutritional requirements, there are lots of really great predictive equations that you can use. The one that like I use in my practice, and I guess it's readily available if you look online, is the Mueller equation. So you don't have to like know anything fancy, just find the calculator online and it can do this for you, or just, hey, ask me. But you implement your lean body mass and your fat mass, and that lean body mass measurement, which is basically hair, skin, nails, bone, skeletal muscle, organ mass, and water. Those things are important because they are a greater predictor of our actual daily energy requirements than fat mass. Now, a lot of those predictive equations usually rely on like height or total body weight, and they're not really the best metrics to help gauge your true energy requirements. So I like the Mueller equation because it basically incorporates your age, your gender, your fat mass, and your lean mass. And then, if you know what your lean body mass is, you can also calculate how much protein you need as well. And I think for all of us ladies, the recommendation is somewhere between 1.8 to 2.9 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass, or if we're talking pounds for the US people out there, I'm from Australia, it's 1 to 1.3 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So I like a range. I think it gives us flexibility, and hopefully you can find a realistic and achievable like target to work to each day. So that's how I do the calculations.
Oh, look, I try to even just, and I know up to 1.3, but I've been telling our women just to at least try to do 1 gram per pound per day. And when I calculate it for them, they go, I don't even get 30 grams in the entire day.
Wow. Yeah. And it's not difficult as well. I think just a little bit of nutrition knowledge. I like to give my clients like a list of, here are just some protein sources. All right, start with that, build your meals around it, and make sure it's tasty and you love it, or you're not going to stick to it.
Yeah, most people don't have any flavor. They think they have to eat with no flavor, hate their food, but you can love your food and get all your nutrition.
I always say, if you do not look forwards to what you're going home to at the end of the day, or whatever you're preparing, doesn't matter what the meal, it becomes really difficult to stick to. So again, for people that are dieting, I will even say something to the effect of, even though we know the importance of dietary fiber, we need to eat 25 to 30 grams of fiber each day. I have a couple of days of the week just while I'm dieting where I give myself even a little bit more flexibility than that, because it allows you to be like consistent and stick with something longer term. So if you're eating a great amount of fiber, like 5 days of the week, and then you have some flexibility and a little bit of fun on your weekends or whatever meal you want, that's okay. You don't have to be perfect every day.
Well, we're definitely not perfect every day, right? No. And I agree. I found when I started getting in trouble, it was because I was eating out a lot. I do love to eat out a lot. We're very busy, right? And so it's easy to pick up. I've been trying to make better choices if I go out and eat and pick a good healthy meal. But like you said, sometimes you have to really look at those ingredients.
Yeah.
And then leave my weekends to kind of have my fun little time and not feel like I'm missing out. And people feel like it's one or the other. And I live by that 80-20 rule in probably most things I do in life. And I think that's served me well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just for mental health and well-being too, I think so many of us get so focused on like the physiological, how we look, the aesthetics, which don't get me wrong, it's an important thing. I think we should all pay attention to how we present. But I think there's also so much value in, keeping the other things, in balance. Otherwise, it starts to feel like very unpleasant and it's just not a comfortable experience. So,
So when we look at muscle mass and as we go in through menopause, definitely decrease our muscle mass. And so women need to increase our protein to be a little bit more fit. Working out, nutrition. I think we should just all say that we do not all need to look like Holly. She is absolutely stunning and ready to train, ready to perform on stage right now. But what's the motivation of just looking what's best for us?
That's a really good question. Look, I think you're right. First off, I am competing. So I think a lot of women will be like, oh, you have a goal physique. And I'm like, well, thank you. But please remember, like, this is a bodybuilding body. Like, it's not something that I think the average person should be striving towards. I mean, if you want to do a competition, sure, you can take things a little bit further. But like for my clients and people that I work with, like what I do is not something that I say, this is what you should all be doing. Because it's not realistic. I mean, how many hours I spend and how many years it's taken me to kind of build a strong, muscular foundation. But, in terms of like where we should be focusing our time, I think as long as you're able to, or if you're able to, get to the gym 3 to 5 times per week. The recommendations around like growing muscle are quite interesting, and it does depend on whether somebody is like a beginner or an advanced or an experienced lifter. But I do quite a bit of research as well, and the research would indicate that if you're doing less than 10 sets per muscle group per week, so let's say you go and you do biceps, you did less than 10 sets a week, that's not necessarily enough to build muscle. That's only going to maintain your muscle. So for a beginner, somewhere between 10 and 20 sets would be enough to build muscle. But if you're an advanced lifter, if you've been going to the gym for a few years, you actually need a little bit more volume. And I would recommend somewhere between 20 and 30 working sets per muscle group per week. So that's kind of the lay of the land. Now, you're not going to be able to do every muscle group, at an optimal volume. So for me, like I will choose a couple of muscle groups that I care about. I compete in bikini, so like nice glutes and shoulders are like the muscle groups of interest. So those will be my really high volumes. And then, I might do my quads and my hamstrings like at a more realistic weekly set numbers. So that's kind of how I build out programs for myself and for my clients. And then from a nutrition standpoint, everybody's nutrition requirements are going to be a little bit different. But again, there's always going to be some amount of sacrifice when you go through a fat loss phase. But it doesn't have to be super scary or extreme. In fact, we want to avoid extremes because that's when we start to lose that muscle that you were mentioning with menopause. As we age, we start to see more muscle sarcopenia. We don't get the same response to our resistance training as we did in our younger selves. So, I think having a balanced approach, but staying focused with some flexibility, I think is really important.
Yeah, and when you mention about the loss of mass as we go in menopause, most women I think don't think about testosterone. They think that's a man's hormone and not a woman's hormone, but we all need testosterone all the time. And when you're young, you have more testosterone, and as you age, that number goes down. And so you'll notice, and we say this all the time as we go to the house, like I used to be able to do, 20 sit-ups and have a six-pack when I was younger. That no longer happens, right? That your whole body composition changes. And I think women need to understand that there are treatments that they can go get their lab work done and get a little bit of supplements and testosterone to kind of help continuous to. Are you seeing that even on an earlier platform for age-wise?
Yeah, I am actually. It's funny. So I've been doing this for, goodness, close to 2 decades. And I'd say over the last 10 years or so, and I don't know whether this is a factor that more people are going and getting tested, which I think is a good thing, regardless of, how we came to this information. But I do see women younger and younger starting to see lower and lower testosterone levels. And I think it's actually that relative change for an individual that is where we really start to see those symptoms. So if your baseline normal testosterone levels were, I don't know, 45 micromoles per deciliter or something, and then you're now seeing like a big drop to 15 or 10, it's that change where I think women really start to feel it. So knowing that you have a solution where you can actually get your levels back up to within a normal healthy range is critical. So I have a lot of ladies like 35 plus that all do hormone replacement therapy, and they feel so much better. Like they were having some mood disturbances, like low mood and depressions, not uncommon with low testosterone. So those things are starting to improve. Their energy levels back, their libido is back. And their motivation to move their bodies is back too. So yeah, I actually utilized hormone replacement therapy in 2022 because I was like hypergonadal, so like 5 micromoles per deciliter. I was so tired, and it made such a big difference just to kind of get back into the even playing field with my women my age, and it made a massive difference. So yeah,
Look, I love that. I think young women, also the notion is they'll think I have to be on this forever. Many times we can rebalance them and something happened, whether it's our nutrition, whether it's what we used, whether it was post-pregnancy and we kind of taxed our hormones, whether it was being on birth control too long. There's so many reasons why we can have low testosterone, but you're right. We are seeing it a lot more, but we're also testing. And people will come in with severe fatigue, or they don't like their husband anymore, right? All these little red flags, and they have low hormones.
yeah.
You say that, but it's true. I feel like we save lots of marriages by giving women testosterone.
Yep, absolutely. No, but it's so important. And you're right. I mean, it's not something that you necessarily have to stay on lifelong. I actually was on it for like 9 months myself, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm in a much healthier place at the moment, less stress. And I made some adjustments to my own diet and my lifestyle, and I was back to within the normal range. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a lifelong commitment either, but it's amazing what you can do in conjunction with good diet, a flexible diet, not restricting all the time, ladies. Like, you need to fuel your bodies. And then, a good resistance training program that follows an evidence-based approach. I mean, that combination is like just the triple whammy.
Yeah.
Wellness 4 cornerstones are nutrition, functional wellness, aesthetics, and brain health. These serve as a guide rail for individuals that are pursuing longevity inside and out. Formula Wellness is setting the new benchmark in preventative healthcare and aesthetics. Thank you for all of your support. To learn more, please visit www.formulawellness.com.
Well, resistance is difficult, I think, for women to understand what they need to get done. You have an app that kind of helps guide the individual through that journey. Tell me a little bit how that would help.
Yeah, so we have a training program. It's called BFib, I should say training app. It has hundreds of different programs for different goals and experience levels. So again, my clientele are primarily women. So I've got a lot of female focused training programs. And I guess by that, I mean, I kind of pick the muscle groups that women generally prefer to work. So there's less like bicep focused programs. And more, full body programs, things like that. But yeah, we have strength specific programs. So we encourage women to be strong. So I have so many different strength training programs. We have resistance programs for building muscle. So those two are slightly different. The way in which we approach rep ranges is a little bit different for strength than it is for building muscle. And we have mobility and flexibility programs. So for people that are starting to get the aches and pains with aging. There's plenty of different movements in there and like education to teach you about that. And then we also have some cardio programs too. So it's a very versatile platform. And then we have all of my recipes and things on there as well, which is very tasty.
I'm looking forward to looking at some of those too. So with women, sometimes we struggle is, do we do upper body all together? Like you were saying, am I working my biceps and triceps and shoulder on the same day? Should I do a full body program? I think that's difficult for us to understand that. And does that change throughout the week?
Yeah, so again, I think all of us have slightly different like focus groups in terms of the muscles that we want to train. So I mean, I have some ladies that are like, I think I've got a good amount of muscle in my quads, but I would really like to grow a perkier, butt. Or they might be like,
Who doesn't want a perkier butt?
right, I know. Okay, you're so true. So yeah, some people will come to us and they're like, I'd like to get more of a V taper, or maybe they're just interested in getting strong. So once we kind of have a better understanding about what, muscle groups they want to work on and what their focuses are, then we start to narrow down and tailor the program to them. But generally speaking, when it comes to building muscle, within any one single program, so let's say you go into the gym today, you probably want to avoid doing more than say 9 working sets, so 6 to 9 working sets on one muscle group before you move on. And the reason for that is we start to see diminishing returns when it comes to muscle growth. So yeah, more is not always better. So you're taking us closer to failure, and that's really important. That proximity to failure is very critical in actually eliciting muscle growth. Because if you're not training hard enough, so like a rate of perceived exertion less than 7, unfortunately, that's just burning calories. It's not necessarily helping to stimulate your muscle to grow.
I'm so guilty in that.
Some of us all are at times, for sure. But like somewhere around like 7 to 10 in terms of the intensity is critical to building muscle. But yeah, I would probably limit the amount of work that you do on any one muscle group within a program to 6 to 9 working sets. And then you move to the next muscle group. So ultimately, that gives you a lot of flexibility to train in many different ways. So you could still do a full body program if you enjoy training that way. I know for me, I used to do like single focus lower body programs or all upper body focus programs. And I just recall doing my leg sessions and I was always dreading them. Like it was so intimidating because I mean, it's a hard session. So over the years, as I kind of learned a little bit more about, how muscle grows and the physiology behind it, I realized that, I can actually train a different way that I perhaps enjoy a little bit more. And now I like going to training. So I'm like, I don't have to flog myself on one muscle group. So I'll occasionally do that style of training, but I personally enjoy more of a full body style program. But there are so many different ways that you can structure a workout. I think coming back to what I said earlier, as long as over the course of a week, you're doing, again, for someone that's new, between 10 and 20 working sets on that muscle group that you want to grow, that's great. If you're an advanced, as long as over the course of the week, you're doing between 20 and 30 working sets, that's ultimately the bigger, more important variable that we need to track when it comes to resistance training.
And it's important to understand for everyone out there that everyone's a little bit different. I do like full body also. Quads are hard. It's our largest muscle, right? And so it expends the most energy. You're the most exhausted after doing your quads. And if you don't do them often and then you can't climb stairs for a few days, it's a problem. But I feel like that's going to give us the best look is really working on our quads and glutes. Especially for women, I think we need to be really strong. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on, there are some stereotypes, and I would expect someone in the, bodybuilding world and a dietitian there's so much stigma about people getting a little bit of help with the GLP-1s or some weight loss medications or going through a weight loss medical program that they're supervised. Do you see that blending into your world?
Yeah, I see it often actually. I'm still a big proponent of it, believe it or not, though I will say it's totally made a big impact on the nutrition space in general. I think that it's negatively affected a lot of business because so many people are turning to these GLP-1s and these other appetite suppressants for, weight loss support. So I mean, I'm like, okay, cool, good on them. I mean, they're getting the help that they need. But I think where we can kind of run into trouble is when you're doing that exclusively without, proper nutrition and exercise advice and education. So I want to give a couple of quick examples because this is like real world practical things that I have seen. So I was once working with this lady and she went off on her own for a little while. And anyway, I got an email from her. And she was like, I'd love to come back and work together with you. And I was like, okay, well, this is wonderful. And she was telling me she'd had all this great success using the GLP-1s. I was like, excellent. But she said, Holly, you know what? The reason I'm back is I was actually in my kitchen not that long ago and I fainted and passed out and she actually bumped her head and had to go to the ER. And she said, that was kind of when I realized, wow, I'm not fueling my body well enough anymore. I've been relying on the appetite suppressing effect to kind of help me with this weight loss. But I realized I've completely let go of all of my exercise. I wasn't training anymore. I was eating poorly. I wasn't paying attention to my protein. And, here we are, hypoglycemic, not eating enough fuel. And she had this, freak, very nasty accident. And she was in her 50s. Bone health is obviously important at this age. So she's like, I think I just need to get back on track. So that's one example of where I've heard somebody, under eating, because of this, powerful, appetite suppressing effect. And then another, I guess, acquaintance that I knew of, she was chatting with me and she said that she'd been successfully using these drugs. And again, they're very effective. But she wasn't aware that she really needed to pay attention to her, essential fatty acids and her fat intake. And she was rushed to the emergency because she had pain in her lower abdominals. And it turns out she ended up having her gallbladder removed. And the reason that she was having her gallbladder removed is because she had not eaten anywhere near enough the minimum requirements for dietary fat. And she ended up developing gallstones. So she had to have her whole gallbladder removed because of it. So again, when it comes to nutrition, as effective as these drugs are, and I am all for them, I have many patients using them concurrently with diet and lifestyle. We have to be aware of like what our bodies need to make sure that we stay healthy and we do this in the right way. So those are some pretty extreme instances, but I want women to be strong, to be healthy all around and metabolically healthy, which these drugs are so effective at doing. But we've got to make sure that we, maintain our bone health. We don't, restrict our calories so much that we start seeing these hormonal imbalances. And I guess this is where kind of you guys step in and you have this powerful platform to help these women, with both of these things. So I'm a big proponent of them, but we've got to do it all.
We do have to do it all. And I force my patients to come back and get on the InBody scale every month because it really looks at how much protein they're having in, what their protein load is, what their fat load is, what their visceral fat is. I tell people all the time, it's more important for me to make sure that your visceral fat, the fat surrounding the momentum of the organs is really going down because that's what's going to increase your health and decrease your cardiac risk. And not just only worry about the pinchable fat, which we're all a little insane about, which I'm okay with working on both, but it has to be a combination. But I spend a lot of time counseling my women right from the beginning, do not stop taking your protein. Just because you're not hungry doesn't mean you don't eat. I need to back down your dose. More is not better, right? And the other big problem that I see is stabilizing how much they lose. They all have taken their whole life to gain this and they want to lose it in a month.
Oh gosh,
right? Can we talk about, a half a pound to maybe 1.5 pounds a week is really great, not 4 pounds every week consistently?
Yeah, so I totally understand where you're coming from. And it's something that we get asked about all the time. It's like, well, I'd like to lose about this much per week. And there are some like pretty extreme requests. And I think number one, we have to be patient with this. So the recommendation, again, this is based on like plenty of research. If we want to avoid losing lean body mass, which is our muscle, our organ mass, again, all of those things contribute so positively to our basal metabolic rate. Like that's going to keep your metabolism robust and strong and healthy, in addition to your lifting. But we want to avoid losing weight at a speed that's greater than, say, 1% of your total body weight per week. So that number is going to look a little bit different from person to person. Obviously, if you've got a 300-pound person versus a 100-pound person, that number, the absolute number, is going to differ a little bit. But I think 1% is kind of the maximum that I work with clients. And, often, like when I diet for competition, like I'm at 0.4% of my body weight for a week. I do it very slowly, very conservatively over time, so that I'm not, number one, restricting everything in sight. Like no one wants to diet that way because I like my food. So you want to go slowly. That'll help preserve your energy. That'll allow you to stay active and like keep living life. Because like, let's be real, who wants to stop living life and having fun? At the expense of a weight loss goal. So yeah, I think making sure that we're mindful of the speed at which we lose, so that we don't, end up losing all of that, it's so critical tissue, that muscle tissue.
Yeah. And that aesthetics look, when people start to lose so quickly, then at the end of this transition, they're coming in and saying, why do I look worse, right? We're having to volumize them. And so typically I'll try to volumize their face as we go. But if they lose really quickly and they're not increasing their mass, now they have all this extra skin that they can't retract back. It takes time for your body process. So I always tell people there's no rush. If you do it safely and slowly, you're actually going to look better at the end than having to then struggle with skin removal surgeries, right? Lots of injectables and trying to maintain what looks healthy.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we like to do is something called just body recomp. So instead of like dropping somebody's calories and going into an extreme deficit, we try to establish like what are their maintenance calories based on how active they are, or maybe how active they want to be. Maybe they've been doing way too much and like, I really just like to have a normal amount of exercise in my life. So we kind of find out what that maintenance calorie target looks like for their calories, protein, carbon, fat, that type of thing. And we just hang out there. We're not restricting, but we allow time lifting weights, building muscle, to kind of take effect. And what we end up seeing is this beautiful kind of opposing line where we've got lean body mass going in one direction, fat mass going in the other direction, but their actual weight doesn't necessarily change a whole lot. And I think honestly, that's probably the safest, most effective way to do things, without executing all of these extreme behaviors.
Yeah, that's why when we do that every month, it plots their growth.
Yeah.
And so we can see what they were doing. Were you losing protein? Were you losing weight? Were you gaining mass, right? And I think that's important. It also tells us what their basal metabolic rate is, right? What are they doing as far as activity? How much they lose per activity? I think a lot of us need that hand holding to kind of understand. Again, I think those days of just starving yourself all the time and having this yo-yo dieting hopefully is gone, and that we're doing it in a much healthier way. And you're dealing with all age groups, right? Making sure if they're taking their calcium, we know that exercise improves our bone density, right? And we still see a huge amount of osteoporosis in today's women.
Yeah, we do. And again, I think this is where that resistance training comes into play. I mean, if you can incorporate a little bit of lifting, I mean, the positive effects it has on bone mineral density and also the aesthetics, you look better in your clothes, you look better naked. But, it also helps improve your metabolism too, because for every 1 kilogram of muscle you add, technically you're moving the needle about 25 calories in terms of your BMR. So if you add, let's say, for instance, 4 kilograms of lean tissue because you've committed yourself to building muscle, you've just added 100 calories to your basal metabolic rate. Now, that might not sound overly impressive on the surface, but that's your resting metabolic rate. So imagine now when you go and move that same more muscular body and you're doing the same things you've always done. You're going to the gym, you're doing your tennis, you're, whatever it is that you do. the amount of calories that your body then burns as a more muscular individual can be significant, you know? So that's really great in that you are able to now eat more food too, doing the same things, and having a leaner looking physique because that extra muscle burns more calories. So, I mean, it's a win-win, but it requires patience.
It does. And look, and we can kind of hate our men for that. So my man is pretty big and muscular, and he can eat whatever he wants and never gains a pound. All that muscle's burning it off, right? Here we are, these little tiny women.
Yeah.
But even for us, being sculpted, having lean body mass, we don't need to be big. I think the misconception too is that women are going to become these huge looking men. And I don't think anybody looks really manly. You look absolutely stunning. And it really is just a nice balance of what that patient thinks is beautiful for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that.
So, you know, I'm going to have to ask you our last question.
Oh gosh.
What does beauty mean to you?
Oh my goodness. This is a really difficult question. I think my opinion would have changed over the years. I think beauty to me is the balance between like physical beauty and like internal beauty. So I think having a good set of values, again, nothing that's too extreme. You know, I know a lot of individuals that I think place so much emphasis just on their exterior, and that is fine. But I think also on the inside is really what counts. So, you know, being a good person, being a kind, giving, compassionate person, but then, you know, having a strong exterior, being physically strong, mentally healthy. I think, you know, it's all about balance to me. So I think that's what I would consider beauty.
I think that was a perfect answer. Thank you so much, Holly, for coming and answering all our questions and giving us such amazing advice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
Thank you.